Hello chess friends and welcome to your Out of Chess channel and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit decline studies. So in this studies we're analyzing this amazing opening from white's and from black's perspective. We have seen very important sidelines, opportunities, variations. We have seen also some cool traps in an early stage of the game in the Queen's Gambit decline. And today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit decline studies and the so-called exchange variation. And we have done already many videos in the exchange variation, but today I wanted to show you a different approach of white that white can play. It's I think an unpleasant approach that you can handle, and in this video I wanted to show you defensive ideas, how to defend against the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. Recently we have done this approach where white is trying this f3 e4 breakthrough. If you're interested in these positions, please check out our Queen's Gambit decline studies exchange variation playlist. Please check it out. We have, as I said, covered this particular sidelines. Today we are doing this approach, knight to f3, where basically white is immediately competing for the center with this normal development of the knight, but is then trying to launch a minority attack with the move a4, b4, then a5 and b5, maybe provoke some backward pawns here on c6, also maybe weak square on c5. So it's a common plan in the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. So let's see now how to defend this position. There is, I think, a beautiful simplifying way to defend against this unpleasant setup, as I said, and we're following now two amazing games that I think cover the basic concept, the basic strategies with the black pieces against the setup. And one is a beautiful gameplay by Zusa Polgar against Božidar Ivanovic, and the other game is an amazing gameplay by Dean Glidden against young Krzysztof Dudav. But let's of course not skip immediately to this position. Let's see how to reach this particular position and how black should counterplay this positional ideas of white. So after move d4, d5, c4, we have the Queen's Gambit now declined, e6, knight to c3, knight to f6, and now comes the exchange variation with the move c takes d5. Now we play e takes d5, bishop to g5, attacks immediately the knight. The threat is always maybe bishop to f6, queen to f6, and then knight to d5. So that's why here, first of all, we have this idea to fix everything here around the square c6, playing the move of fixing everything around the square d5, simply playing the move c6. So now e3, and this move is a preparation to play bishop to d3, also not allowing black to play a very nice positional move, bishop to f5. If your opponent allows you in some lines, maybe immediately with the move knight to f3, then you can play bishop to f5, and I think you're pretty solid here. So if your opponent is not competing immediately for the f5 square, you can occupy it. But when he plays e3, now bishop to f5 is not so good, because he has this one, queen to f3, you have to step back, bishop to f6, queen to f6, queen takes f6, g takes f6, leads, I think, into a very, very complicated game for black. You not lose the game, of course, immediately, because you have this setup, and you have, of course, the bishop here, but I would not recommend you to go in this line. You have to be really a positional beast. Only the bravest, I think, dare to play this position with the black pieces, and in my opinion, this is not something that I would recommend you. So, as I said, after move bishop to g5, we play c6. After e3, we play normal development with the move bishop to e7. But now white occupies this diagonal and is not allowing us to develop in a good way with our bishop on f5. So, okay, then we play knight to d7, and now comes the different approach. As we said, now we are analyzing this move knight to f3. In our previous videos, we have analyzed this approach where white is trying queen to c2, we castle, then f3, e4 is the preparation, then rook to e8, knight to e2, and then we start here with a5, b5, b4, a4. We can launch here also a nice attack. Knight to b6, knight to c4 is a possibility. So please check out this sidelines. We have covered many videos if you're interested also into this setup. So, but now, as I said, we are analyzing the move knight to f3, and here my recommendation is to simplify the game immediately. There is now immediately an opportunity to get an equal game, and you play simply a beautiful hop with your knight here. After move here bishop to d3 and knight to f3, notice that the bishop and the knight are a little bit lined up, and there are even some fork ideas, so that's why we can play immediately knight to e4. And there are now basically two good moves that white can play. Bishop to f4 is one approach, and also to take out immediately here the bishop on e7. Let's see first of all this move bishop to f4, and now we're following the game Ding Glidden versus Jan Krzysztof Duda. Notice that we have now a great grip around the square e4. This is a good thing for us. We have to compete simply further for the e4 square, so that's why we have to play knight to f6. Now, after kingside castling, we simply compete further for the e4 square, but now after move queen to c2 and kingside castling, now comes a very important idea by white. White wants to play the move f3, and then to push simply here you away here from the center of the board, and when f3 happens, if you play something like knight to d6, then here the bishop could be hanging. So that's why you have to play now a beautiful positional move g6, and after f3 that here also Ding Glidden played against Jan Krzysztof Duda, now we play knight to d6, and after bishop to f5 and knight to f5, I think this is a good position already for black, because when we watch now the structure here in the beginning, we have many pawns on light squares. So basically what we're trying to do is to trade off our light square bishop. We want to get our light square bishop off the board, and that's mission accomplished. I think with this maneuvers, with this beautiful move g6, we have done it. And now I think when we compete now, the bishop's activity, the dark square bishop's activity, black's dark square bishop is slightly better than white's dark square bishop because of this small pawn chain that is on dark square. So basically you see the bishop on f4 is a little bit stuck to the defense of the pawn on e3. So as I said, mission accomplished. I think we have gained equality for sure here. So of course there are some chances, a3, b4, b5, maybe launching a minority attack, but this position can be defended. For instance, in this game played by Ding Glidden against Jan Krzysztof Duda, here Ding didn't want to tolerate even this beautiful knight on f5, but now here knight to g8 was knight to g7 was played by Jan Krzysztof Duda, and now after something like rook to d1 we can compete against this unpleasant knight on e5, and from this point on I think we have good chances. I'm not saying this is something spectacular, I'm not saying you will win the game because you have reached this position, but in my opinion this is solid play and equality. That's basically what you're searching for when you play with the black pieces. You cannot just have everything prepared. You have to also compete. You have to also struggle. You have to also battle, of course, for your win. So let's go back. So after move knight to e4, this is now this beautiful here preparation to simplify the game. Of course, also bishop to e7 can be played, but now comes the fun part. We can connect now the queen to the knight, and the knight is still fixed around the square e4. And now we're following the amazing gameplay by Zsuzsa Polgar against Božidar Ivanović. Božidar Ivanović, really strong grandmaster, and here he shows really his great positional skills. He fixes simply the structure around the square e4, and basically what here Zsuzsa Polgar try to do after move bishop to e4 and d takes e4 is to leave here Božidar Ivanović a little bit with the bad bishop. As I said in the beginning also of our analysis here, our light square bishop is really not the best piece. In the previous game Ding Glidden versus Duda managed to somehow trade off the bishops by playing the move g6 and then to play this maneuver on f5. Now it's a different story. Our light square bishop here has a decent activity, but in a potential fully endgame stage, I'm talking about really when we maybe trade off more pieces, when we maybe would have a knight versus bishop endgame or something, the bishop wouldn't be so good because it's always a little bit stuck to the defense of the pawn on light square. So as I said, we have to now find at least some great attacking chances in order to make something happen. If this game reaches the fully endgame stage, I guarantee you will not have fun with your light square bishop here on the board. So here queen to c2, Zsuzsa Polgar continued the pressure, bishop to f5. The only good thing and the main good thing here that we have is the space advantage of this pawn on e4. The knights are a little bit deflected from the defense of the king, and basically now in this position white has some problems where to castle. Now in this game kingside castling was played. If you play queenside castling, in my opinion also not really the optimal position. We can attack immediately the flanks, b5, a5, a4, b4, so the knights will get a little bit exposed. Bishop to e6 maybe can happen, bishop to g6, simply fixing everything around the square e4. So queenside castling would not be also a good continuation here for white. So that's why here kingside castling by Zsusa Polgar. Now also kingside castling by Božidar Ivanović. And now after rook from a to b1, as promised, white is still trying the main plan, the minority attack. Don't forget about this particular idea of white. Many times this idea will come in these types of structures, in these types of position, where basically white is hoping to play b4, b5, and then after something like c takes b5, rook to b5 to continue the pressure here simply on the b file, and then also to have here a supported pass pawn on d4. So many positional problems you can get here if you don't react correctly from black's perspective. So here rook from f to e8 played by Božidar Ivanović. Good move. This move supports our main space advantage that we have, of course, with the pawn on e4. But when we are protecting now the pawn with the rook, of course, our queen can play much more freely. And also, I think later this bishop can be maybe included into the attack. Maybe we sneak in with the queen somewhere, play bishop to h3. Suddenly, I think we have great attacking chances. But now comes the move b4. And you see now, you have to be now very careful what you're trying to do. One of the good things that you can do is immediately to launch a flank attack with the move h5. This is really the top engine recommended move. This move the Stockfish engine likes immediately. And the problem here for white is here, if he plays too early the move b5, you can have, I think, a great defensive move, c5. Passing through after d takes c5, queen to c5. Notice now that the whole attack by white has splashed. No open files can be created here by white, because we have now 2 versus 2 situation on the queen side. So you can maybe push the pawn further somehow on b6, but then we'll pass through with the move a6. We'll lock the position on the queen side, and mission accomplished. We have defended everything that bothered us simply on the queen side. Now I think it's a decent game. Okay, here after move b4, Božidar Ivanović tried a different approach. He tried to stop the pawn chain, but even if you play something like b takes a5, then rook to a5 will happen, and suddenly also black has, I think, decent chances on the queen side, maybe targeting the weak a2 pawn. The only problem that I see in this scenario is, of course, then again, this backward pawn on b7. But this pawn, after something like, I don't know, rook to a8 and then bishop to c8 can be maybe protected. Maybe we can still continue the pressure here. So, in my opinion, also a decent game here for black. But okay, after move b5, here a5 that Božidar Ivanović played, Zsusa Polgar played now again this move b5. But now, as I said, very important defensive move, and this is the most important move, I think, that Božidar Ivanović now played in the whole game. This move against c5 is creating this, again, 2 versus 2 situation on the queen side. So no open files can happen. So we have solved now all of our defensive problems here on this side of the board, and now it's time to attack the other side of the board, because our space advantage here on e4 is, of course, on this side of the board, and many pieces we have already there. So now when we have defended the position, look at this, knight to b3 was played, c takes d4, okay, knight to d4, bishop to d7 is competing, of course, against this knight. And although we played a little bit passively with our bishop, still this bishop is staying very active and is targeting still the king side. From this point on, I think black is taking over. Black is having now his fun in this particular position. So queen to b3. Now Ivanović comes in a beautiful way into the game with the queen. We have h3, queen to g5, bishop to h3 is the threat. We have king to h2, queen to h4, and look at this, knight to g4 is one threat. In some lines, if possible, maybe even to sack the bishop. Many tactical threats. Maybe also the rook lift is working, something like rook to e5, rook to g5, rook to g7, king to g7, queen to h3, or bishop to h3. So many things are coming to our mind, but I think we can agree that suddenly black is having here great attacking chances. So knight to d5. Here Zsusa Polgar is battling. We have knight to g4, kicking with the king, king to g1, and now knight to e5. Simply rerouting the knight, finding a better square. We have knight to f4, bringing a new defender into the game, and now rook from a to d8, also bringing the last piece into the attack. Very important move. Now we can also maybe in some lines sack the rook on d4 after e takes d4, the knight could be maybe taking the pawn is a little bit overloaded to the defense of both of these knights. So you see Božidar Ivanović is playing really, really beautiful active chess. So rook to c1, we have g5 here. Ivanović doesn't want to tolerate this amazing defensive knight by Zsuzsa Polgar. Knight to d5 is of course threatening the fork on f6, but now g4 solves this positional problems. The queen is now connected to the f6 square. We have knight to f4. Again, Zsuzsa Polgar is trying to get the piece back into the game, but now after g takes h3, in my opinion, this is messed up game here. g3, still look at this, h2, king has to come on h1, the queen's still staying on the h file, and now after rook to c7, now look at this, we have provoked structural weaknesses, light square weaknesses, and now after move queen to c2, now comes the tactic that we have talked about. Rook to d4, e takes d4, and now bishop to f3, knight to g2, and after queen to h3, here Zsuzsa Polgar resigns. So there's nothing that can be done. You can just bring, of course, the rook temporarily into the defense, but this pawn is covering everything, so it's game over. Very, very stunning game here by Božidar Ivanović. So let's go back. This is now the key moment when we have the setup bishop to d3, knight to f3. So when white is not playing on this positional approach, queen to c2, after e4, then we have this opportunity to hop with the knight on e4, simplifying the game, forcing couple of trades of pieces here in the center of the board. Now after something like bishop to e7, queen to e7, the queen gets connected to the knight on e4, and as I said, if here white retreats to f4, then we again connect our knight to the square e4, and then look at this, as we said, bishop to f5, queen to c2, kingside castling, knight to e5, threat is f3, g6, and now here knight to d6. Perfectly fine in my opinion. Solid play here for black for sure. So okay, this is our study in the exchange variation, the positional variation of the Queen's Gambit decline with this knight to f3 sideline. In my opinion, very, very important approach, must know theory in order to simplify the game enough for you, because if you don't do that, I guarantee you have many, many complications. So in my opinion, this is simply one of the best defensive approaches against this annoying setup. So, okay, if you want to see more about the Queen's Gambit decline, about also this other sidelines in the exchange variation, and maybe you're interested maybe in this Tarash, semi-Tarash, I don't know, other possibilities in the Queen's Gambit decline, please check out our whole playlist. Here's the link, and what do we say at the end of the video? Chess is the best, of course.